A millionaire finds a poor girl sleeping on the street. Out of pity, he offers her 3 wishes, but the girl's first request leaves him completely shocked. Before listening to this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exciting tales. The rain fell mercilessly on the capital that winter night. The streets were practically deserted, except for a few taxi drivers and delivery men who braved the downpour. From his office on the 40th floor, Victor Allianz watched the raindrops trickle down the panoramic window, creating hypnotic patterns that reflected the city lights. His austere face, marked by premature wrinkles at 42 years old, showed no apparent emotion. "Mr. Allianz, the merger documents are ready for your signature," said his assistant, placing a folder on the black marble desk. "You can leave it there. I'll sign it before I leave," he replied without taking his eyes off the window. The assistant hesitated for a moment, as if wanting to say something more, but then quietly withdrew. Victor was used to this kind of reaction. People around him always seemed uncomfortable with his calculated coldness, but he had learned long ago that feelings had no place in the business world. When he finally decided to call it a day, it was already past midnight. The rain had lessened, but it was still falling steadily. The building's security guard handed him the personalized umbrella with the Allianz Enterprises logo, the multinational he had inherited from his father 8 years earlier, and transformed into a billion-dollar empire. "Good evening, sir. Your driver is waiting," the security guard informed him. "That won't be necessary. I'll just walk a bit," Victor replied, surprising the employee who was used to seeing him always leave in the imposing armored car. The truth is, Victor couldn't bear the thought of returning to his empty penthouse that night. Since Olivia, his current wife, had traveled with their teenage son to visit relatives in Europe, the loneliness of the apartment suffocated him more than usual. Not that his marriage was warm. It was more of a convenient partnership, an alliance between influential families than a union born of love. As he stepped out of the building, the icy wind hit his face. Victor raised the collar of his cashmere overcoat and began to walk aimlessly. His footsteps echoed on the wet sidewalks, while his mind wandered to contracts, stocks, and market strategies, the only universe where he truly felt in control. It was then that a subtle movement on a corner caught his attention. Near the entrance to a closed shopping arcade, a small pile of cardboard boxes shifted slightly. Victor would have continued on his way if he hadn't seen a pair of childlike eyes watching him curiously through the soaked boxes. Something unusual happened at that moment. A feeling forgotten for years overwhelmed him. Perhaps compassion, perhaps simple curiosity. He stopped and, after a few seconds of hesitation, cautiously approached. "Hello," he called, immediately feeling silly for talking to a pile of cardboard boxes. His eyes remained fixed on him, now with a mixture of fear and hope. Slowly, a small girl emerged from the makeshift shelter. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. Her dark hair was tangled, and her clothes, a coat too thin for the temperature and faded jeans, were soaked. Despite her precarious condition, there was a surprising dignity in the way she stood and faced the imposing businessman. "Do you work in that big building?" the girl asked, pointing to the Allianz Enterprises skyscraper. The question caught Victor off guard. It wasn't what he expected to hear. "Yes, work. What are you doing here alone in this rain? Where are your parents?" The girl looked away, suddenly interested in her own soaked and torn shoes. "My mother is in heaven now," she replied, with a simplicity that hit Victor like a punch in the gut. "It's been a few months. Since then, I've been sleeping in different places." Victor felt something break inside him. An emotion he hadn't experienced in so long, he almost didn't recognize it. It was as if a dusty window had opened inside him, letting in a current of fresh, painful air. "Are you hungry?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. The girl nodded shyly. "What's your name?" "Helena," she replied, and for the first time, a small smile appeared on her rain-soaked face. In a fit of impulse that he would later be unable to explain, Victor did something completely out of character. "Helena, I'm going to make you an unusual offer. I can grant you 3 wishes. What do you want most in the world right now?" He expected her to ask for food, shelter for the night, maybe even money. He was prepared to buy her a snack, pay for a hotel, give her some bills that would temporarily resolve the child's situation while he contacted the appropriate authorities. Helena paused thoughtfully for a few moments, as if she were seriously considering the offer. Then she looked directly into Victor's eyes with an intensity that was disconcerting for someone so young. "My first wish is that you learn to smile again," she said with conviction. Victor was paralyzed. Of all the possible answers, that was the one he least expected. How could that child, in just a few seconds of interaction, have seen something that even the people closest to him couldn't see? The lack of joy, the absence of genuine smiles, the emptiness he had carried for so long that he no longer even noticed it. "How do you know I don't know how to smile?" he asked, genuinely intrigued. Helena shrugged as if the answer were obvious. Her eyes looked sad, like my mother's before she became very ill. She too had forgotten how to smile. The rain began to intensify again. Victor looked at the soaked child and made an impulsive decision that would change his life forever. "Come with me, Helena. Let's get out of this rain and find something for you to eat. Then we'll think about what to do." He extended his umbrella over the girl and offered his hand. Helena hesitated for a moment, but then something in her childlike face changed, as if an important decision had been made. She confidently took Victor's hand. "Will you grant my wish?" she asked as they walked. "I don't know if I can," Victor replied honestly. "It's been a long time since I've truly smiled." "All right," Helena said with wisdom beyond her years. "We have time. I still have 2 more wishes, remember?" Victor didn't know it yet, but that small hand that held his with such confidence would guide him on a journey of rediscovery he had never imagined possible. As he led Helena to his car, which remained parked in the building's basement, a strange feeling washed over him, as if in some inexplicable way this encounter was not a matter of chance, but a long-delayed reunion. The doorman of the luxurious building where Victor lived couldn't hide his surprise when he saw the usually solitary businessman arriving accompanied by a ragged child. But a firm look from Victor was enough to silence any comment and quickly opened the door for the two. Inside the mirrored elevator that went straight up to the penthouse, Helena gazed in wonder at her own infinitely multiplied reflection and the contrast between her soaked clothes and Victor's impeccable suit. "Do you live alone in such a large building?" she asked. "Not the whole building," Victor explained patiently. "Just the top floor, and I'm not usually alone, but my wife is traveling with her son." Helena nodded, processing the information. "So you have a family," she observed. Victor hesitated before answering. "I have a family arrangement," he corrected, more to himself than to the girl. "It's different." The elevator arrived at its destination with a soft, clinking sound. The doors opened directly into a private hall decorated with contemporary artwork and indirect lighting. Helena took a few cautious steps, as if afraid of soiling the Italian marble floor with her wet shoes. "Come in," Victor encouraged, surprised by the gentleness in his own voice. "We'll find dry clothes for you and something to eat. Then we'll talk about how to help you find a suitable place." But as he guided the little visitor through the luxurious apartment, Victor had no idea that this rainy night would be just the beginning of a story that would transform not only Helena's life, but also his own, filling voids he didn't even know he carried. As the hot shower water ran, Helena gazed in wonder at the bathroom, larger than many apartments she had stayed in. Steam fogged the enormous mirror as she tried each of the shampoos lined up on the marble shelf. Victor had left a set of clothes belonging to his stepson Theo on the counter, and although they were too big for the girl, they were dry and clean. In the kitchen, Victor stared at the open refrigerator, unsure of what to offer a child. As the CEO of a multinational corporation, he was used to making decisions that affected thousands of lives, but now he found himself paralyzed by something as simple as preparing a snack for a 7-year-old girl. "Can I help you with anything, sir?" asked the housekeeper Anna, whom Victor had summoned from his apartment downstairs, despite the late hour. "Yes, Anna, I need something a child would want to eat," he replied, embarrassed by his own inadequacy. Anna, who had worked for the family for over a decade, showed no surprise at the unusual situation. With quiet efficiency, she began preparing hot chocolate and sandwiches, while Victor vaguely explained that the girl was the daughter of an acquaintance and needed temporary shelter. "Where will she sleep, sir?" asked Anna, practical as always. Victor hadn't thought of that. His apartment had 5 suites, but only 3 were furnished, his, Olivia's, and Theo's. "Prepare the guest room, the one with a view of the park," he decided after a moment of reflection. When Helena finally appeared in the kitchen, she was almost unrecognizable. Her dark hair, now clean, revealed reddish highlights that Victor found strangely familiar. Theo's clothes formed a kind of makeshift dress on the small figure, fastened at the waist by a belt wrapped several times. "I'm hungry," she announced, sitting down shyly on one of the high stools at the marble counter. Anna served the hot chocolate and sandwiches, watching with maternal interest the voracious appetite of the girl. Victor remained silent, studying Helena's face as if searching for something he couldn't define. "How long have you been on the street, Helena?" he finally asked. The girl chewed slowly before answering, as if carefully measuring her words. "Since my mother last went to the hospital. That was when the purple flowers were on the trees." "Purple ipe trees. September, then," Anna translated, exchanging a meaningful look with Victor. "Almost 3 months," he murmured. "And during all this time, no one took care of you. You have no relatives, no responsible adult." Helena shook her head negatively. "I had an uncle, my mother's brother. He came when she was in the hospital, but I didn't see him again after that. I think he didn't like her very much, or me." Something about the way she said it made Victor frown. "And your father?" she asked with forced casualness. Helena remained silent for a few moments, swirling the mug of hot chocolate between her hands. "My mother said he was a very important and busy man," she finally replied. "She kept a picture of him in a locket, but I lost it when I had to run out of the last place we were sleeping." "Why did you choose to sleep in front of my building?" Victor asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Helena's face lit up with a small smile. "I didn't choose your building, I chose you." The answer completely baffled Victor. "What do you mean you chose me? You didn't know me until a few hours ago." Helena shrugged, a gesture that seemed to say that adults sometimes didn't understand obvious things. "My mother always stopped in front of that building. She would stare up for a long time. Before she left, she told me that if I were ever alone, I should look for the man who worked on the top floor of the big building with the blue letter A. She said you would know what to do." A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Anna, sensing the sudden tension, discreetly withdrew, murmuring something about preparing the room. Victor felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. His mind raced, making connections that had remained dormant until then. "Helena, what was your mother's name?" she asked in a choked voice. "Rose," the girl replied simply. "Rose Carmen." The impact of that name hit Victor like a physical wave. He had to lean on the counter to keep from stumbling. Rose Carmen, the woman he had loved 8 years ago, before his father's sudden death completely changed the course of his life. Rose, who had disappeared without explanation just when he needed her most, leaving only an enigmatic letter that he, hurt and overwhelmed, never truly understood. "Did you know my mother?" Helena asked, carefully observing the businessman's reaction. Victor took a deep breath, trying to regain control. "Yes," he finally replied. "We've known each other for a long time." What he didn't say, what he couldn't say at that moment, was that Helena's reddish hair, the shape of her eyes, even the slight gesture of tilting her head while listening, everything about her screamed the truth that was beginning to form in his mind. Helena wasn't just Rose's daughter. Based on the dates, the circumstances, the way Rose had specifically directed the girl towards him, Helena was probably his daughter. "Are you all right?" the girl asked, reaching out with a small hand to touch Victor's arm. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," he lied, forcing himself to regain his composure. "I'm just tired and surprised by this whole situation." Helena nodded earnestly. "I'm surprised too. I didn't think you really existed. I thought it was just a story my mother made up to make me feel safe." Those simple words carried enormous weight. Victor felt an unfamiliar emotion tighten his throat. If Helena was truly his daughter, it meant that for all these years, Rose had raised the girl alone while he went on with his life, unaware of his own daughter's existence. "Helena," he said, choosing his words carefully, "you said your mother kept things. Belongings, documents, anything she considered important. Do you know where those things are now?" The girl frowned thoughtfully. "I have a backpack. I hid it under the cardboard boxes when I saw you approaching. It has all of Mum's important things inside." Victor felt his heart race. "We need to go back to get that backpack. Tomorrow morning, I promise." Helena yawned, tiredness finally overcoming the excitement of the unusual day. "I'll show you where you'll be sleeping tonight," Victor said, guiding her down the luxurious hallway to the guest room Anna had prepared. Helena's eyes widened at the sight of the king-size four-poster bed and the silk curtains framing the window overlooking the city's Central Park. "It's a princess's room," she whispered, marveling. It's yours for now," Victor replied, feeling strangely emotional at seeing the girl's genuine joy. After helping her settle in and making sure she was comfortable, Victor went to his private office in the apartment. With trembling hands, he opened the safe built into the wall and removed a carved wooden box that he hadn't touched in years. Inside was Rose's last letter, along with some photographs and small mementos of the brief but intense relationship they had shared. He reread the words he had memorized but never truly understood. "By the time you read this, I will have already left. Don't look for me. This is the hardest decision of my life, but it's the only one I can make right now. You have an important path ahead of you, and I can't be a part of it now. Maybe one day we'll understand that the times were never right for us. I keep our love in my heart, where it will always be safe. Rose." At the time, devastated by the sudden loss of his father and burdened with the responsibility of taking over the family business, Victor interpreted the letter as abandonment, as rejection. He felt betrayed precisely, when he needed support the most. It was this feeling that gradually froze his heart, transforming him into the cold and distant man he was today. But now, with the possibility of Helena being his daughter, everything took on a new perspective. What if Rose had left because she discovered the pregnancy? What if, knowing the critical moment Victor was facing, she had decided not to add that burden to his shoulders? The idea was simultaneously liberating and devastating. Victor spent the night awake, searching through memories, recalculating dates, trying to piece together the puzzle that was his life. When the sun began to rise, tinging the capital sky with shades of pink and orange, he had made a decision. He would discover the truth, no matter the cost. And if Helena was truly his daughter, he would do everything to make up for the lost years. What he didn't know was that the truth would be even more complex and painful than he imagined, and that the journey that began there would lead him to confront not only his past, but also powerful enemies in the present. In the guest room, Helena slept peacefully for the first time, in months. Under the pillow, her small hand held tightly an object she hadn't shown Victor, a silver locket with the initials VA engraved on it, containing inside a photo of a younger man, with a smile that had long since disappeared from his face. Dawn brought with it a reality that seemed like a distant dream to Helena. Opening her eyes in the immense bed with soft sheets, she needed a few moments to remember where she was and how she had gotten there. The guest room in Victor's penthouse was larger than any place she had ever slept, and the view of the city waking up below had something magical about it. Wearing the same oversized clothes she'd borrowed the night before, Helena walked barefoot through the silent apartment, feeling the cold marble beneath her feet. She found Victor on the balcony, a cup of coffee in his hands, his gaze lost on the horizon. He was already impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit, as if ready for a normal day's work, but something in his posture revealed that the night had been as restless for him as it had been transformative for her. "Good morning," said Helena, her small voice almost carried away by the morning breeze. Victor turned around, and for a brief moment, Helena saw something different in his eyes. It wasn't exactly a smile, but a gentleness that hadn't been there the night before. "Good morning, Helena. Did you sleep well?" She nodded, approaching timidly. "I've never slept in such a big, soft bed," he confessed. "It felt like I was floating on a cloud." Victor indicated a chair next to him. Anna prepared a full breakfast. It's in the kitchen, but before we eat, we need to talk. Helena sat down, her heart racing slightly. Adults wanting to talk usually meant problems. Are you going to send me away? He asked directly, his eyes fixed on Victor's. The question caught the businessman off guard. For a moment, his professional facade faltered, and Helena glimpsed something that seemed like vulnerability. No, he replied firmly. In fact, I want to propose the opposite. I would like you to stay here, at least for now, until we resolve your permanent situation. Helena visibly relaxed. So what do you want to talk about? Victor placed his cup on the coffee table and leaned slightly forward, his elbows resting on his knees in a more accessible posture. You mentioned yesterday that you have a backpack with your mother's important things. We need to pick it up today. And also, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Helena, I need to better understand your story, your relationship with your mother, and who your father is. The girl studied Victor's face for a few seconds, with that same disconcerting intensity as the night before. You think you're my father, don't you? She asked with a simplicity that completely disarmed the businessman. Victor paled. All his careful preparation, all the questions he had formulated during the sleepless night, the gradual approach he had planned, it all crumbled before the perspicacity of that 7-year-old child. Why do you say that? She managed to ask, her voice hoarse. Helena shrugged, a gesture that Victor was already beginning to recognize as characteristic of her. Based on how you reacted when I mentioned my mother's name. And also, she hesitated, suddenly appearing insecure, as if she feared she had said too much. And what else, Helena? Victor insisted gently. The girl sighed, then reached into the pocket of her oversized trousers and pulled out the medallion she had hidden the night before. She held it out to Victor, who took it with trembling hands. Mum said this belonged to my father. She gave it to me before she left. She said that one day I would understand. Victor carefully opened the locket. Inside, exactly as Helena had mentioned, was a photograph of himself from 8 years ago. He was smiling, a genuine smile he no longer recognized in himself. Next to the photo, engraved in silver, were his initials, VA. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over him, relief at finding such clear confirmation, anger at all the lost years, guilt for not having looked for Rose after her disappearance, and something else, something he hadn't felt in so long he almost didn't recognize it. Hope. Why didn't you show this last night? He asked, his voice betraying the restrained emotion. Helena lowered her eyes. I wasn't sure if you'd want to be my father, he replied honestly. Many adults don't like children, especially children who are a handful. I wanted to see first if you were a good person. The bluntness of the response hit Victor like a punch. It was true that he had never shown any particular affection for children. His marriage to Olivia, who already had Theo from a previous relationship, had been more of a strategic alliance than a union based on love. And although he treated Theo properly, he had never truly developed a paternal bond with the teenager. And what is your verdict? He asked, trying to keep his tone light, although his heart was racing. Helena smiled, a small but sincere smile that lit up her face. I think you can learn to be a good father, just like you'll learn to smile again. Before Victor could answer, the intercom rang. It was the building's security guard, informing him that Pietro Lehmann, head of security for Allianz Enterprises, had arrived as requested. Victor invited Helena for breakfast while waiting for Pietro to arrive. The girl enthusiastically devoured the pancakes, fruit and juice prepared by Anna, while Victor watched her, marveling at how easily she seemed to adapt to new environments. There was a resilience in that child that he couldn't help but admire. Pietro arrived minutes later, his face expressing discreet surprise at seeing the girl at the breakfast table of the always lonely boss. Victor led him to the office for a private conversation, but not before promising Helena that they would return to the place where he had found her to retrieve her backpack. I need a thorough and discreet investigation, Victor explained, after briefly recounting the situation to Pietro. I want to know everything about the last 8 years of Rose Carmen's life, specifically to confirm if Helena is really my daughter, to understand why Rose never contacted me, and to discover the exact circumstances of her—" Victor couldn't pronounce the word. "Death," Pietro finished respectfully. "I understand, sir. I'll begin immediately. I also suggest a medical evaluation for the girl. Considering the time she spent on the streets, it's prudent to check her state of health." Victor agreed, grateful for Pietro's efficiency and discretion, who had worked for the Allianz family since his father's time. "There's one more thing," he added before the head of security left. "I want a team monitoring the company building and this building. If Helena was sleeping near our office following specific instructions from her mother, it's possible that other people know about the connection and might be interested in her." Pietro nodded gravely. "Security measures have been enhanced." "Understood." "Sir?" After the head of security left, Victor and Helena went down to the place where they had met the previous night. The backpack was exactly where the girl had said, hidden under the soaked cardboard boxes. It was a simple backpack, made of faded pink nylon, surprisingly heavy for its size. Back at the apartment, Victor suggested they examine the contents together. Helena agreed, but insisted she would be the one to remove each item. There was a specific order in her mind, a kind of ritual that Victor respected. Sitting next to her on the sofa in the spacious living room, the first item was a small photo album with a red faux leather cover. It contained mainly photos of Helena at different ages: newborn, 1-year-old, 3, 5, always alongside Rose, whose radiant smile contrasted with the increasing paleness noticeable in the more recent photos. "Mom was very beautiful," Helena commented, reverently running her fingers over her mother's face. Victor nodded, unable to speak. Rose had truly been beautiful, with her red hair and bright eyes. In the last photos, however, she was almost unrecognizable, too thin, her gaze tired, although her smile for her daughter had never completely disappeared. The second item was a shoebox filled with children's drawings, Helena's artistic evolution over the years. Many depicted her and her mother. Some included an unidentified male figure, always in formal attire, always smiling. Victor felt a pang in his chest, realizing that Rose had maintained the idea of a father present in his daughter's life, even from a distance. Next came documents. Helena's birth certificate, where the father field was blank. School reports showing excellent grades up to the previous year. A meticulously updated vaccination record. Rose had been a dedicated and caring mother, even in the difficult circumstances Victor was beginning to foresee. At the bottom of the backpack, wrapped in a silk handkerchief, was a sealed envelope inscribed, "For Victor, when the time comes." Helena handed it to him with a solemnity that seemed beyond her years. "Mom said this was for you, but only when we met. I think now is the time." Victor took the envelope reverently. He was about to open it when the phone rang. It was Pietro, and from the tone of his voice the matter was urgent. "Mr. Allianz, we need to talk in person. I've come across some worrying information. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Victor hung up, a dark premonition taking hold of him. "Did something bad happen?" Helena asked, her keen perception picking up on the change in the businessman's mood. "I don't know yet," he replied honestly, "but we'll find out together." Helena nodded, then surprised Victor by taking his hand and squeezing it lightly, as if she were the one offering him comfort, not the other way around. That small gesture, so simple and so profound, caused something to break inside the businessman. For the first time in years, Victor Allianz felt tears welling up in his eyes. Carefully tucking Rose's envelope into the inside pocket of his jacket, he vowed to himself that, regardless of what he discovered, he would protect that child with his own life if necessary. Because even without DNA tests, even without official confirmation, his heart already knew the truth. Helena was his daughter, and he wouldn't allow anything else to hurt her. What he didn't know was that Pietro's discoveries would uncover a web of conspiracy, betrayal, and greed that extended far beyond Rose and Helena, reaching the highest echelons of Allianz Enterprises itself, and the mysterious death of his father 8 years earlier. The approaching storm would test not only his newfound paternity, but also every value he believed he upheld. Pietro Limen arrived punctually, his normally impassive face betraying signs of concern. Victor received him in his private office, while Helena remained in the living room, engrossed in a tablet that Anna had provided for her. "What did you find out?" Victor asked as soon as the door closed. Pietro placed a folder on the table and sat down, his expression serious. "We've begun the preliminary investigation, and what we've found so far is worrying, to say the least." He opened the folder, revealing surveillance photographs, medical reports, and meticulously organized official documents. Rose Carmen passed away approximately 3 months ago in a public hospital after battling a rare form of leukemia for over a year. Medical records indicate that she refused experimental treatments and opted only for palliative care for the last 6 months. Victor closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the impact of that confirmation. Although he already knew of Rose's departure through Helena, hearing the clinical details made it all painfully real. "The most worrying part," Pietro continued, "is that in the last 6 months of Rose's life, she appears to have been systematically monitored." He slid some surveillance photographs across the table. They showed Rose, already visibly weakened, in different locations, leaving the hospital in a pharmacy, entering a small apartment in the suburbs of the capital. In several of them, Helena appeared by her side, always holding her mother's hand, always looking protectively around, as if instinctively sensing the danger. "Who was monitoring her?" Victor asked, his voice hardening. Pietro pointed to one of the photos, which partially showed a man in a grey suit observing Rose and Helena from inside a dark car. "Aaron Muller, Rose's half-brother, same mother. He is 42 years old, has a history of minor financial crimes, and has never been convicted. He officially works as an investment consultant, but maintains connections with questionable elements in the financial market." Victor frowned. Rose had never mentioned a brother during the time they were together. "What is his interest in Rose and Helena?" "That's what makes everything even more suspicious," Pietro replied, pulling another document from the folder. 3 weeks after Rose's death, Aaron filed for guardianship of Helena as her next of kin. Simultaneously, he initiated proceedings to administer a trust fund in the girl's name. Victor felt the blood run cold in his veins. "What background?" "A trust fund was established anonymously 8 years ago, coincidentally around the same time her father passed away, and Rose disappeared from her life. The initial value was 10 million, but with conservative investments, it now exceeds 20 million. Victor's mind raced, connecting the dots, spotting patterns. 8 years ago, the critical period when everything changed, when his father died unexpectedly of a heart problem, when he abruptly took over the company, when Rose disappeared. "Who established this fund?" he asked, although he already suspected the answer. Pietro hesitated, which was unusual for the usually confident head of security. "The documentation indicates Luca Ollins as responsible for creating the fund." Victor felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. Luca Ollins had been his father's partner and Victor's mentor in the early years of his career. He had died in a car accident 5 years ago, taking many company secrets with him. "That doesn't make sense," Victor murmured. "Why would Luca create a fund for Rose's daughter without informing me? And why has Rose never used that money? From what we've seen, she and Helena have been living modestly, almost in poverty for the past few months." "Regarding this, we found something interesting," said Pietro, revealing another document. "The fund has a specific clause. The money can only be accessed after Helena turns 18, or in the event of Rose's death, by a legally appointed guardian. Apparently Rose never wanted to touch this money, even when her financial situation deteriorated with her illness." Victor rummaged through the folder, examining the documents himself, trying to understand the complex web that was forming. "There's something else you need to know," Pietro added with evident hesitation. "I believe Helena is in immediate danger." Victor looked up, alert. "Explain." "Aaron Muller has been monitoring this building for the past few days. Our security cameras captured him watching the main entrance last night, shortly before you arrived with Helena, and again this morning." Pietro swiped through a few more surveillance photos, showing the man in the grey suit in a parked car with a direct view of the entrance to the luxurious building where Victor lived. "Does he know the girl is here?" "We believe so. And considering his sudden interest in Helena's custody, immediately after discovering the existence of the fund. Victor didn't need Pietro to finish the thought. The man wasn't interested in Helena. He was interested in the millions from the mysterious trust fund. "Reinforce security at the building immediately," Victor ordered, standing up. "No one enters or leaves without full identification. And prepare the necessary documents so I can request temporary custody of Helena while we confirm paternity." "It's already being taken care of," Pietro assured. "Our legal team is preparing the documentation, and a trusted doctor will come today to collect material for the DNA test." Victor nodded, grateful for Pietro's efficiency. Then he remembered the envelope Helena had given him. He took it out of his inside jacket pocket and placed it on the table. "Before making any decision, I need to read this. It's a letter from Rose to me." Pietro understood the signal to leave and stood up. "I'll be in the room with the girl. No one will enter here without your permission." When the door closed, Victor stared at the envelope for several long seconds before finally opening it. Inside he found several pages written in Rose's elegant handwriting, which he knew so well. His heart racing, he began to read, "My dear Victor, if you are reading this letter, it means I am no longer here, and that our daughter, Helena, has finally found her way to you. There is so much to explain, so much to ask forgiveness for." Victor felt his vision blur with unshed tears as he absorbed Rose's words. She explained how she discovered her pregnancy the very week Victor's father passed away abruptly. How, knowing the critical moment he was facing in taking over the company, she decided not to add the weight of an unexpected fatherhood to his already burdened shoulders. But there was more, much more. Rose revealed that, during a chance encounter with Luca Ollins, weeks after her separation from Victor, she discovered something disturbing. Luca, drunk and visibly disturbed by some deep guilt, hinted that Victor's father's death might not have been natural. He spoke of incriminating documents, of betrayal at the highest levels of the company, of embezzled money. Frightened and unsure of whom to trust, Rose decided to distance herself completely, fearing that her connection to Victor could put him and the baby she was carrying in danger. Weeks later, Luca sought her out, sober and determined. He established the trust fund for Helena, demanding absolute secrecy, and provided false documents so that Rose could start over far from the capital. "I accepted his help for the same reasons that made me leave, to protect our daughter," Rose wrote. "I never touched the money from the fund because I always suspected its origin. Luca never explained where those millions came from, but his behavior suggested a guilty conscience, an attempt at reparation." The letter continued, detailing how Rose eventually discovered her illness, how she struggled to raise Helena alone, how she repeatedly tried to gather the courage to seek out Victor, only to back down, fearing the repercussions. In the final paragraphs, her handwriting became less steady, revealing her physical deterioration. "Now that my time is running out, I realize I may have made the biggest mistake of my life by keeping you two apart. Helena deserves to know the wonderful father I know you can be, and you deserve to know the incredible daughter we have. She has your intelligence, Victor, your determination, but also a kindness and intuition that are uniquely hers. Take care of her, protect her, especially from my brother Aaron, who recently found out about the fund and has shown an interest in Helena he never had before. Finally, there's something you need to know about your father and about Luca. I left everything I discovered in the old central bank branch on Acacia Street, safe 17C. Helena has the key. She knows where it is, though she doesn't understand its significance. It's dangerous, Victor. Be cautious. Forgive me for leaving, for hiding Helena from you, for all the decisions I made believing they were the right ones. If you ever felt for me half of what I felt for you, I know you will find room in your heart for that forgiveness. With eternal love, Rose." Victor finished reading, his face wet with tears he hadn't even realized were falling. The letter revealed not only the existence of his daughter, but hinted at a much larger conspiracy involving her father, Luca, and possibly the very structure of Allianz Enterprises. She stood up, carefully placing the letter in the safe built into the wall. She needed time to process everything, but time was precisely what she didn't have. Helena was possibly in danger, and the answers she so desperately sought seemed to lie in the mysterious safe Rose had mentioned. Upon returning to the room, he found Helena and Pietro looking at something on the tablet. The girl smiled when she saw him, but the smile faded when she noticed his red eyes. "Were you crying?" she asked directly. "Yes," Victor admitted, deciding that honesty would be the foundation of his relationship with his daughter. "Her mother's letter moved me. She was an extraordinary woman." Helena nodded gravely. "She was the best mother in the world." He agreed. "And she always said you were the best man she'd ever known, even when she was sad looking at your building." Victor sat down next to the girl, taking her small hands in his. "Helena, we need to talk about some important things. About your Uncle Aaron, about a safe deposit box your mother mentioned, and about the next steps to ensure your safety." The girl frowned. "Uncle Aaron is not a good person," she declared with surprising conviction. "Mom never trusted him. He only showed up when he needed money, and he got very angry when he found out she couldn't help him. Do you know about a safe? Did your mother mention anything about a bank on Acacia Street?" Helena's eyes lit up with recognition. "The treasure place. Mom took me there once, shortly before going to the hospital for the last time. She showed me the old building and said that one day I might need to remember it. And..." She hesitated, then took a small golden key attached to a cord from her pocket. "She gave it to me. She said it was the key to the future, and that when I found you, I should give it to you." Victor observed the small key with reverence. It was an old bank safe key, the kind that was no longer manufactured. Engraved on it was the number 17C. "Helena, you are a very brave and very special girl," he said, feeling a wave of emotion and pride he had never experienced before. "And I promise that from now on, I will do everything in my power to be the father you deserve." The girl smiled, a smile that lit up the whole room and, for the first time in 8 years, made Victor's lips curve. In response, it wasn't yet the full smile Helena had wished for as her first request, but it was a start. The beginning of a journey that would lead them not only to unravel the secrets of the past, but to build together a future neither of them had imagined possible until the previous rainy night. What Victor didn't know was that, while he and Helena were strengthening their bond, powerful forces were already mobilizing against them. In a luxurious office in the capital's financial center, Aaron Muller was arguing with a man whose face remained in the shadows. A man whose identity, when finally revealed, would shake the foundations of the Alliance Empire and force Victor to confront not only external enemies, but also demons long buried in his own heart. The old bank branch on Rua das Acacias was a relic from another era. The neoclassical building, with its imposing columns and bronze details already oxidized by time, contrasted sharply with the glass and steel skyscrapers that dominated that part of the capital. Inactive for over a decade as a branch, the structure now served only as a storage center for old documents and safes that had not yet been transferred to more modern facilities. Victor parked his unassuming car, not the Bentley he usually drove, but a regular sedan that Pietro had provided for security reasons, a few meters from the entrance. Helena gazed at the building with a mixture of reverence and apprehension. "It's exactly as I remember it," she whispered. "Mom said it was like a palace where people kept their secrets." Victor smiled at the poetic description. "Your mother always had a special way with words." Before they got out of the car, he checked one last time the instructions Pietro had sent. The head of security had remained in the apartment, coordinating the installation of additional security systems and further investigating Aaron Muller's recent activities. "Remember what we agreed on, Helena," Victor said seriously. "We go in, find the safe, take what we need and leave, without drawing attention, without taking longer than necessary." The girl nodded, her small face taking on an expression of determination that reminded Victor once again how much she was Rose's daughter, and his. The bank's interior was silent and dimly lit, with only a few elderly employees attending to the rare customers, who still needed access to old documents or safe deposit boxes. Victor approached the main counter, where a grey-haired lady, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, watched them over her reading glasses. "Good morning," he greeted with his best professional smile. "I'd like to access a safe." "Name and number of the safe deposit box, please," the employee replied mechanically. "Victor Allianz, safe 17C. The woman typed the information into an old-fashioned computer, frowning at the screen. "This safe deposit box is registered in the name of Rose Carmin, sir." Victor was prepared for this possibility. "Yes, my wife," he lied softly, mentally thanking himself for having thought to bring the proper documents. "Unfortunately, she passed away recently. I have here the power of attorney that authorizes me to access the safe." He presented the carefully forged documents that Pietro had provided during the night. The clerk examined them meticulously, then turned her attention to Helena, who remained quietly beside Victor, clinging to his hand. "And this must be little Helena," she commented with a warmer smile. "Rose used to bring her here from time to time, a lovely girl." Helena smiled shyly, perfectly playing her part. Victor felt a surge of pride at his daughter's intelligence and adaptability. After a few more checks, the clerk finally led them down a marble corridor to a room where rows of metal safes covered the walls from floor to ceiling. She located 17C, inserted her own master key into the top lock, and instructed Victor to use Helena's key in the bottom lock. "I'll leave you two alone," the employee said. "Ring the bell when you're finished." As soon as the door closed, Helena solemnly handed the small golden key to Victor. The safe opened with a soft click, revealing a surprisingly spacious interior. Victor carefully removed the contents: a box of documents, a large sealed envelope, an old USB device, and, curiously, an apparently handmade rag doll. Helena immediately recognized the doll. "Mom made this for me when I was a baby," she exclaimed, hugging it tightly. "I thought it got lost in the last move." Victor smiled, touched by the girl's genuine joy. Then he focused on the documents, quickly flipping through them to understand their contents before putting them away in the folder he had brought. "What are these papers?" Helena asked curiously. "Clues," Victor replied distractedly, his mind already processing the fragmented information he was able to gather. "Clues about your mother's past, about my father, and about why some people might be interested in you now." One page in particular caught his attention. A toxicology report dated 8 years ago, exactly the week his father had passed away. Victor felt his blood run cold as he read the preliminary findings, suggesting the presence of an unidentified substance in Marco Allianz's blood, a substance that did not appear in the official autopsy reports he had received at the time. Carefully putting all the items away, Victor helped Helena close the safe and called the clerk. As she escorted them back to the main lobby, the girl clutched the rag doll tightly to her chest, like a recovered treasure. As they were leaving, Victor noticed something that made him instinctively put his hand on Helena's shoulder, guiding her closer. A dark car parked across the street, with a man in sunglasses at the wheel, watching the bank entrance. The description perfectly matched Aaron Muller's vehicle in the surveillance photos Pietro had shown him. "Change of plans," Victor murmured to Helena, leading her in the opposite direction from the car they had used to arrive. "Let's walk to the next corner and get a taxi." Helena, noticing the tension in Victor's voice, didn't ask any questions. They walked casually, like a father and daughter on a normal stroll, although Victor kept a watchful eye on the reflections in the shop windows to check if they were being followed. Victor's phone vibrated in his pocket. It was Pietro. "We have a problem," said the tense voice of the head of security. "Aaron Muller has filed for emergency custody for Helena, claiming you kidnapped her. A social worker, accompanied by police officers, is on his way to your apartment right now." Victor felt a tightness in his chest. "How much time do we have?" "Less than an hour, I'd say. And one more thing. We just found out that Muller is under investigation for financial fraud. If he gets custody of Helena and access to the trust fund—" "I understand," Victor interrupted. "Alert our legal department. We'll be back in 20 minutes. He hung up and turned to Helena, who was watching him attentively. The girl's ability to understand complex situations without needing detailed explanations continued to impress him. "We need to get home quickly," Victor explained as he signaled for a taxi. "His uncle Aaron is trying to cause us trouble." Helena nodded gravely. He was always good at causing trouble for Mom, too. During the drive back, Victor opened the sealed envelope they had found in the safe. It contained a handwritten letter from Luca Ollins to Rose, dated shortly before the accident that had taken her life. Rose, if something happens to me, you need to know the truth. Marco didn't die of natural causes. I have proof, but I also feel guilty. The fund for Helena is only the beginning of my redemption, but it won't be enough. Someday, when it's safe, give this information to Victor. He deserves to know what really happened to his father. The company was infiltrated at the highest levels. Trust no one, especially. The letter ended abruptly, as if Luca had been interrupted before completing the crucial warning. Victor felt a chill run down his spine. His father's death, which he had always accepted as tragic but natural, now appeared in a completely different and possibly criminal light. Upon arriving at the building, Pietro was waiting for them in the lobby, his normally impassive face betraying concern. "Have they arrived yet?" Victor asked, keeping his voice low as they hurried toward the private elevator. "Not yet, but our contacts in the police have confirmed they are on their way. The good news is that our legal team is already preparing a rebuttal to Muller's request, based on their investigation for fraud and the evidence that you are Helena's biological father." In the apartment, an elegant middle-aged woman awaited them, Dr. Agnes Lehman, Pietro's cousin and a renowned forensic geneticist. "We can do the DNA test immediately," she explained, indicating the portable equipment she had brought. "I'll have preliminary results in a few hours, enough to contest Muller's request for emergency custody." Helena watched everything attentively, clutching her recovered rag doll. Victor knelt down to be at her level. "Helena, some people are going to come here today asking questions about you, about me, about how we met. They might even suggest that you should go with your Uncle Aaron instead of staying with me." The girl's eyes widened in alarm. "I don't want to go with him. I want to stay with you." Victor smiled gently, touching his daughter's face. "And I want you to stay with me too. But to ensure that, we need to follow some rules when these people are here. We need to be honest about how we met, but we also need to show that we're happy together, that we take care of each other. Do you understand?" Helena nodded solemnly, then surprised everyone by saying, "Should we say that you're my real father? Because Mom always said you were, even when you didn't know about me." Victor felt a lump in his throat. "Yes, we should say exactly that because it's the truth." The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of the visitors. Pietro checked the security monitor and confirmed a social worker, 2 police officers, and surprisingly, Aaron Muller was with them. "Remember," Victor whispered to Helena, "be yourself. That's all we need." The scene that followed was tense and uncomfortable. The social worker, a stern-looking woman named Viola Salin, asked pointed questions about Victor's sudden interest in a street child, hinting at questionable motives. Aaron Muller stood a few steps behind, watching with a satisfied smile that Victor had been tempted to punch with a well-placed punch. Helena, however, was the star of the show. With surprising eloquence for her age, she explained how her mother had always spoken of Victor as her true father, how she had advised her to look for him if she ever found herself alone, and how, even in just 2 days, she already felt she had found a home. "When Mom got sick," Helena said clearly, "she showed me pictures of my father and told me that one day we would meet. She never talked about my Uncle Aaron, except when he showed up wanting money and making Mom cry." Aaron visibly paled as the social worker frantically took notes. Dr. Agnes then intervened, explaining that they were in the process of officially confirming paternity through DNA testing, and that preliminary results would be available within a few hours. "I understand the authorities' concern," Victor said in the controlled voice he used in crucial negotiations, "but Helena is my daughter. I was unaware of her existence until yesterday, due to circumstances that Rose, her mother, explained in letters I possess, and am willing to share with the court. As for Mr. Muller, I suggest investigating his sudden interest in the guardianship of a niece. He practically ignored for 7 years, coincidentally after discovering the existence of a trust fund in Helena's name." The mention of the trust fund made Aaron step forward, his face contorting in anger. "That's defamation. I've always cared about my niece." "Then why did Mom cry every time you left?" Helena asked directly, her voice small but firm. "Why did you yell at her, demanding money she didn't have?" The silence that followed was deafening. The social worker looked from Aaron to Helena, then to the police officers, who seemed increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. "I believe that, for now, the best thing for the child is to remain where he is," Viola finally decided, "especially considering that there is consistent evidence of a paternal bond and no evidence of mistreatment or inadequate conditions here. The court will decide the issue of permanent custody after a full evaluation of the case." Aaron looked like he was about to explode, but he held back, shooting Victor a look that was pure venom before abruptly leaving, followed by the police officers. The social worker stayed behind for some final guidance and to schedule a follow-up visit. When everyone finally left, Victor felt as if he had run a marathon. Helena, on the other hand, seemed energized by the experience, her eyes shining with a mixture of triumph and relief. "We did it!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms around Victor's waist in a spontaneous hug that took him by surprise. Victor felt something break inside him, a final barrier of ice that had protected his heart for so long. He knelt and embraced Helena properly, feeling her small, fragile body against his, the precious life Rose had protected, the daughter he didn't know he had, the miracle he had found on a rainy night. And then, to the surprise of everyone in the room, Pietro, Agnes, Anna, and especially himself, Victor Allianz smiled. Not the calculated smile he used in negotiations, nor the polite smile for corporate photographs, but a genuine, radiant smile that transformed his face and reached his eyes. "Your first wish," Helena whispered, touching her father's face reverently. "You're learning to smile again." At that perfect moment, neither of them could imagine that the battle was only beginning. The secret Victor had discovered about his father's death was just the tip of an iceberg of conspiracy and betrayal that extended to the highest echelons of Allianz Enterprises. And Aaron Muller, far from giving up, was about to ally himself with someone whose identity would shake the foundations of the new family Helena and Victor were building. Someone very close, someone no one would suspect, someone who had much to lose if the truth came out. 3 days had passed since the social worker's visit. The DNA test had confirmed what Victor already knew in his heart. Helena was, without a doubt, his biological daughter. With this result and the support of Allianz Enterprises' powerful legal department, Victor had obtained temporary custody while the formal paternity suit proceeded through its legal course. The news inevitably leaked to the press. "Billionaire discovers secret daughter living on the streets," was the sensational headline now plastered across tabloids and gossip websites. The company's public relations department worked frantically to control the damage, while Pietro reinforced security around Victor and Helena. On the rooftop, however, a new dynamic was beginning to take hold. Helena explored her new home with boundless curiosity, asking questions about everything, from the artwork on the walls to how the home automation system worked. Victor, in turn, was surprised to discover a patience he didn't know he possessed, explaining every detail with a genuine pleasure he hadn't experienced in a long time. That morning, they were in the kitchen preparing an elaborate breakfast together. Or rather, Helena was helping while Victor and Anna did the real work. The girl, wearing an apron that was too small for the businessman but too big for her, was vigorously mixing the pancake batter. "Is this okay, Daddy?" she asked. The term Daddy, used for the first time the previous night, still caused an overwhelming emotion in Victor. It was as if each time Helena called him that, a small part of the ice that had surrounded his heart for so many years melted a little more. "Perfect," he replied, noticing the joy on his daughter's face. "You'll be a better chef than Anna in no time." The housekeeper laughed, shaking her head as she prepared the red berry sauce that would accompany the pancakes. The light, almost familiar atmosphere was interrupted by the sound of the private elevator arriving at the penthouse floor. Victor tensed instantly. He hadn't expected visitors so soon. The door opened, revealing Olivia, his wife, accompanied by his stepson Theo. Both seemed exhausted from the trip, but while Olivia's face showed bewilderment at the domestic scene in the kitchen, Theo's eyes displayed a barely disguised hostility. "Victor," Olivia called, her voice wavering between confusion and irritation. "What's going on here? Who is this child?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the kitchen. Helena instinctively moved closer to Victor, as if seeking protection. He gently placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Olivia, Theo, welcome back," Victor said with a calmness he didn't truly feel. "This is Helena, my daughter." The next few hours were tense, with Olivia alternating between disbelief, anger, and calculated coldness as Victor explained the situation. How Helena was the result of his relationship with Rose before he met Olivia, how he had just discovered her existence, and how the DNA confirmation was already complete. Theo, a 14-year-old with the volatile temperament typical of his age, observed the whole situation with a mixture of fascination and resentment. Helena, for her part, remained extraordinarily calm, responding politely when questioned directly, but staying close to Victor whenever possible. "So, you just decided to bring her to live with us without consulting me?" Olivia finally asked when they were alone in Victor's office. Helena had been left with Anna to finish breakfast, while Theo had retreated to his room with headphones on and a stormy expression. "The situation demanded immediate action," Victor replied. "Helena was living on the streets after her mother's death, and there are additional complications. Rose's brother is trying to gain custody of her for financial reasons." Olivia ran her hand through her perfectly styled hair, a rare gesture of loss of control. "Victor, I understand the urgency of the situation, but you have to understand how this affects me, how it affects Theo. We come back from a 3-week trip to discover that suddenly we are a family, with a child we've never seen before." Victor felt a pang of guilt. Olivia was right. The way everything had happened hadn't been ideal. Their marriage, though more of a partnership than a union based on love, had always been founded on mutual respect and consideration. He should have at least called, prepared the ground. "You're right," he admitted. "I didn't handle this in the best way possible, but I hope you can understand that we're dealing with extraordinary circumstances." Olivia watched him for a long moment, then asked the question that had probably been on her mind since she first saw Helena. "You're different, Victor. There's something in your eyes I've never seen before. This girl, does she really mean so much to you in such a short time?" Victor did not hesitate. "Yes. I don't know how to explain it, Olivia. It's like a part of me that I didn't know was missing suddenly appeared. She's my daughter." A heavy silence fell between them. Finally, Olivia nodded slowly. "I'll need time to process all of this. And Theo, well, you know Theo. He already has enough to deal with at his age without adding an unexpected half-sister to the mix." Victor agreed, grateful for Olivia's relatively controlled reaction. Their marriage might not be based on burning passion, but there was a mutual respect and understanding that he valued. "Thank you," he said sincerely, "for trying to understand, for not making this more difficult than it already is." Olivia gave a small, sad smile. "I always knew what I was getting into when I married you, Victor. Our terms were always clear. I just didn't expect this." That afternoon, while Olivia rested from her trip and Theo remained holed up in his room, Victor decided to show Helena the second gift he had prepared for her, her own room, completely decorated and furnished in record time by the interior designers Pietro had hired, following the few clues they had about the girl's tastes. When she opened the door to what had once been a rarely used secondary office, Helena's face lit up with astonishment and joy. The room was a dream in shades of aquamarine and gold, with a 4-poster bed, bookshelves full of books carefully selected for her age, a study area with the best educational computer on the market, and even a small telescope positioned near the window overlooking the night sky. "Is it for me?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper of disbelief. "All yours," Victor confirmed. "We can change anything you don't like." Helena walked slowly around the room, touching each item reverently, as if she feared that everything might disappear at any moment. When she reached a small reading chair in the corner, she found something that made her gasp. A framed portrait of Rose smiling radiantly with baby Helena in her arms. How did you manage this?" she asked, tears glistening in her eyes. Victor knelt beside her. "It was among the things in the safe," he explained gently. "I thought you'd like to have it close by, always." Helena hugged the portrait to her chest, then on impulse threw an arm around Victor's neck, embracing him as well. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered against his shoulder. Victor felt his own eyes welling up with tears. How was it possible that in just a few days this little person had so completely transformed his life, his heart, his very being? The moment was interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Theo stood there observing the scene with an expression impossible to decipher. "Theo," said Victor, rising to his feet, "come and meet Helena properly." The teenager reluctantly entered the room, looking around with a studied disdain that couldn't completely hide his curiosity. "Hello," Helena said politely, wiping away her tears. "Is your room this beautiful too?" The innocent question seemed to temporarily disarm Theo, who shrugged in response. "It's nice, I think," she murmured. Then, looking at the portrait Helena was still holding, she asked, "Is that your mother?" Helena nodded, holding out the photo so he could see it better. "She was very beautiful," Theo commented, his voice softening slightly. "I'm sorry that she, you know." "Thank you," Helena replied simply. Then, with her characteristic frankness, "It's difficult, isn't it, when things change suddenly and you have no choice?" Theo looked at her in surprise, as if he hadn't expected that level of understanding from such a young child. "Yes, it's difficult," he finally agreed. Victor watched the interaction with a mixture of hope and apprehension. He knew that adjusting wouldn't be easy for any of them. Theo, already dealing with the complexities of adolescence, now had to share not only his home, but also his stepfather's attention with an unexpected half-sister. Olivia needed to completely recalibrate her view of what her family and marriage were. And Helena, well, Helena was navigating a new world, with new people, new rules, all while processing the recent loss of her mother. "How about a tour of the rest of the apartment?" Victor suggested, trying to ease the tension. "Theo can show you his favorite spots. He knows all the secret corners." To his surprise, Theo did not protest. On the contrary, he seemed slightly enthusiastic about the opportunity to demonstrate his superior knowledge. "There's a secret passage that leads from the coat closet to the main walk-in closet," he told Helena, whose expression immediately lit up with interest. "A real secret passage? Like in mystery books?" "Well, it's not exactly a secret," Theo explained with the condescension typical of teenagers explaining things to younger children, "but almost nobody knows about it." As the two left the room, Helena already bombarding Theo with questions about other secret passages or hiding places in the apartment, Victor allowed himself a moment of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could build something resembling a functional family out of this extraordinary situation. His phone vibrated with a message from Pietro. "We need to talk. Critical information about the documents in the safe. Come to the office immediately." Reality returned with full force. For a few precious moments, Victor had allowed himself to focus solely on Helena, on his new family in formation. But the secrets Rose had left in safe 17C, secrets about the possible criminal death of her father, about Luca's betrayal, about the corruption in her own company, could not be ignored. Leaving Helena in Theo and Anna's care, Victor headed to the Allianz Enterprises headquarters. The imposing mirrored skyscraper in the capital's financial center was a monument to the empire his father had built, and which he had expanded exponentially over the past 8 years. Now looking at that gleaming structure reflecting the sky, Victor felt as if he were observing a stranger. What else didn't he know about the company he ran, about the people he trusted, about his own past? Pietro awaited him in his private office on the top floor, accompanied by Chiara Limen, the brilliant financial analyst who led the company's internal audit division. Pietro's normally calm face displayed lines of concern, while Chiara appeared simultaneously excited and apprehensive. "We've discovered something, sir," Pietro said, without preamble as soon as the door closed. "Something big." Chiara opened her laptop, revealing a screen full of complex spreadsheets and charts. The safe's USB drive contained encrypted financial records, she explained, her fingers gliding quickly across the keyboard as she navigated between different files. Luca Ollins maintained a parallel accounting system, documenting what appears to be a massive scheme to embezzle company funds. Victor felt the blood run, cold in his veins. Was Luca stealing from the company? No, Chiara replied, her eyes shining with the intensity of someone who had solved a complex mystery. Luca was tracking down who was stealing, and from what we've been able to piece together so far, it was someone very close to his father, someone who had access to the highest levels of the company. Who? Asked Victor, although a dark premonition was already beginning to form in his mind. Pietro and Chiara exchanged a hesitant glance. We're not absolutely certain yet, Pietro said cautiously, but all the evidence points to Felipe Muller. Victor felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Felipe Muller, his father's financial mentor, the man who had guided Victor through the turbulent first months after Marco's death, the man who currently held the position of Chief Financial Officer of Allianz Enterprises. Felipe Muller, Olivia's uncle. The implications were devastating on multiple levels. Professionally, it meant that the person responsible for the finances of her empire was potentially involved in fraud and misappropriation of funds. Personally, it meant a disturbing connection between Olivia and the entire situation. Wait, said Victor, a new piece of the puzzle falling into place in his mind. Felipe Muller, Aaron Muller, they are distant cousins from what we've discovered, Pietro confirmed. A weak connection, but it definitely exists. And there's more. We found evidence of communication between them in recent months, coinciding exactly with the period when Aaron began monitoring Rose and Helena. The room seemed to revolve around Victor. All this time, while he was building his empire, while he was marrying Olivia, while he was living his perfectly ordered and controlled life, a conspiracy was unfolding right under his nose. A conspiracy that had potentially begun with his father's death and now threatened his newly discovered daughter. We need concrete proof, he said finally, his voice cold with determination. And we need a plan. If Felipe is really involved, he's dangerous and resourceful. And if he realizes we're investigating, we have already implemented maximum security protocols, Pietro assured. This investigation is being conducted by a minimal team of people I fully trust, and security around you and Helena has been discreetly reinforced. Victor nodded, grateful once again for Pietro's competence. How long until we have enough evidence? A few days, maybe a week, Chiara replied. Luca's records are detailed but fragmented. We're piecing the puzzle together piece by piece. At that moment, Victor's phone rang. It was Olivia, her voice trembling slightly. Victor, you need to go home now. Theo and Helena, there's been an incident. Victor's heart raced. Are they all right? What happened? They're physically fine, but... Victor, Theo is accusing Helena of theft. He says she took the watch you gave him for his birthday. Things are tense here. Victor hung up, his face pale as he turned to Pietro and Chiara. I need to go. Continue the investigation and keep me informed. And Pietro... Yes, sir. Increase surveillance on Philip and Aaron. I want to know their every move. As he drove back to the penthouse, Victor couldn't help but think about the strange timing. Just when they were discovering a possible connection between Felipe Muller and the whole conspiracy, an accusation surfaced that placed Helena under suspicion within her own home. Was it really just a coincidence? Or was there more to this supposed incident than met the eye? 2 months later, Victor confronted Felipe in the meeting room, irrefutable evidence in hand. For my father, for Rose, and for Helena's safety, the arrest of the man who had killed his father brought a dark chapter to a close. That night, watching Helena sleep peacefully, while Olivia and Theo chatted on the balcony under the moonlight, Victor felt something different. He picked up the photo Helena kept under her pillow, him, her, Olivia, and Theo smiling in the park. Without realizing it, his face lit up. The first wish had been fulfilled, and the other 2 were on their way. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Victor and Helena's journey has touched your hearts. For more moving stories like this, we've created a special playlist that you can find by clicking the link on the left of the screen. If this narrative about second chances and families formed by the heart moved you, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Also, share in the comments which moment touched you the most in this story. Every day we bring you unique content that explores the depth of human feelings. Stay with us for the next story that will surely move you too.